Hey guys, Mike here from Lunch Money Comics with another comic book roundup video for you. This is where I show off all the comic books I've found in strange and unusual places over the last month or so that I have not yet shown on the channel. Now, some of these have footage attached, some of them don't, but the one thing they all have in common, I think they're pretty cool, and this is going to be a really fun video because I have a huge stack of comic books to show you, not just this, but some other comic book related things, and a pretty cool unboxing at the end. If this looks daunting, guys, don't forget, it's not hoarding if it's comic books. So before I show you everything in this pile, if you like this sort of stuff and you want to support the channel, head on down, like, comment, and subscribe, and follow me on Instagram under Lunch Money Comics IG. So as I'm going through these comic books, I'm going to be mentioning some other comic book content creators. And whenever I do that, I'm going to put on the screen hashtag comic book shoutout. Now this is a tag created by my friend Brian, Big B McFly, the comic book guy. Brian is a fellow comic book YouTuber and Instagrammer who's a very valuable part of the online comic community because he's so good at community building. As a matter of fact, he came up with this tag as a way for YouTubers to shout out other YouTubers and Instagrammers and try to get more attention to them, especially if they're new and upcoming. And it's been incredibly successful, so much so that Brian's been nominated as a finalist in the Comic Book Creator Awards for Best Community Building Event. So not only will I be mentioning some fantastic comic creators in this video, I will be linking down in my description to all their socials. Make sure you check them out after this video. And this will all make sense at the end of the video when I open that package I mentioned. All of this will come full circle. Stay tuned to see what I mean. Now I have a lot of comic books to go through, so in the interest of time, let's jump right into it. Starting with a comic book that I've mentioned on my channel recently, but I could not show it because I went to a local comic book festival where I met a ton of local independent comic creators. I had a fantastic time, and one of the gentlemen I met was named Keith Gleason, who's not only a local comic creator, but he also runs a comic book show in central Massachusetts, and come to find out, he's a stand-up comedian. And because he's a funny guy, most of his comic books have to do with silly and fun and irreverent things, lots of parody. And there was a comic book he had that I absolutely wanted. Unfortunately, I was gabbing away, the comic book show closed, and I missed him, and I couldn't get it. I mentioned in that video that I did that I wanted to contact him and get that comic book. Well, I did. I sent him some money, and he mailed this to me, and man, am I happy I finally have it, because here it is. This is the Unfunny X-Cons #1, and clearly this is a parody of X-Men #4, the first appearance of the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, except instead of Mastermind, Toad, Quicksilver, Scarlet Witch, and Magneto, we have Hamstermind. There's a hamster driving a guy. Toe, instead of Toad, Quacksilver, the Scarlet Wrench, and leading them all, Magneto, who appears to be a combination of Magneto and the Planter's Peanut. He's got like a monocle and everything. Clearly a silly book that fits Keith's personality. He was even so kind to sign it for me. But he also sent some other cool things. He sent me some trading cards and a bookmark of the Mighty Mascots, which is sort of his like main title. They're serial mascots that fight crime, because of course. And he sent these to me to give to my kids. How cool is that? And there's one more thing that Keith is. He is also a fellow YouTuber. He runs a show called the Indie Comics Relay, where he and some other comic book lovers get together and talk about independent comic books. And I've watched a couple episodes, guys. They're great because they're short, digestible content. Perfect if you don't have time for a really long video. So I'm mentioning all this because Keith is my very first target of the comic book shoutout. So thank you so much, Keith, for sending me this. I can't wait to read it. As an X-Men fan, I couldn't live without it, and I hope to see a lot more of you in the future. So next up, I have a comic book I actually have shown on my channel in the past, but I have an update for you because it's this book. This is Iron Man #282, known as the full first appearance of the War Machine armor. Normally piloted by James Rhodes in this comic, it's still piloted by Tony Stark. Now, when I got this comic book at a comic and collectible store, it was in really bad shape. In fact, it was heavily stained with water and black mold. Normally, guys, when you come across a comic book that has mold on it, you stay away from it with a 10-foot pole, unless you know a guy that can fix it up. And I do know a guy. His name is Jeff from Comic Spa. I mention him all the time on my channel. He's the best comic cleaner and presser I know. But it just so happened that Jeff had recently built from scratch an ozone chamber, which was designed to treat and kill mold and mildew on comic books. So when I saw this comic book, I thought it would be a perfect test of Jeff's new equipment. So I got it really cheap. I brought it over to his place. He showed me how the technology worked. Not only did he put it in this ozone chamber to kill the mold, he then took the cover off and put it through an aqueous bath to make sure he completely cleaned as much of it as he possibly could, then did his normal cleaning and buffing and pressing. So I promised when I got that comic book, I'd give you all an update as to how it turned out. Well, right now I will show you the before image of what that black mold looked like. And now I will show you the back. So here is that same comic book. There is still a little bit of staining. There's still a little bit of, evident water damage, and you could barely see where that mold was. But guys, it is much better. In fact, there was even mold on the front, and that's completely gone. On top of that, the aqueous bath did its trick. The whole comic book is much cleaner. He definitely did his normal buffing and pressing. It is limber, it is flat. Clearly, Jeff did a great job cleaning this book up, and of course, it was a great test of his equipment. Guys, I always mention Jeff down in my description. I put his email address there. If you want the best of the best, absolutely contact him. He has a long wait list, but trust me, he is worth it. Awesome, Jeff. Thank you so much for this very cool comic book. You did such an awesome job. So ever since I started my channel, I've met a ton of amazing people in this hobby, especially from the New England area. Many of these people I know in real life and would now consider real life friends. One of those people is Josh from Vermont, a local comic book collector, and also he sells under the name of Sasquatch Comics, also has a pretty fun IG account. Well, just like me, Josh collected those Marvel trading cards from the early 90s. I love these cards. I still have all the cards I had as a kid, and I'm always getting in new ones. But unlike me, Josh lost all of his cards at some point in time, and has been spending the last couple of years trying to recapture all those sets he had in his youth. So I have tons of duplicates of these cards, and every once in a while I trade him some of my extra cards for some of his comic books. He also happens to sell at a local indoor flea market consignment shop called Whitney Hill Antiques in Greenfield, Massachusetts. Not only does he have a great little setup there, but he has fantastic prices on his comic books. So I told him I'd meet him up there one day. I brought my extra trading cards, and I got there before he did. I had time to go through his comic books, pulled out a big stack, and when Josh finally showed up and says, "Hey, what do you want to do for a trade?" I showed him what I had, and he said, "Take them all." So we did a pretty straight up trade, and I have some pretty cool comic books in here, guys. A lot of these I already have, but they were good enough, and the prices were fantastic. They were worth picking up other copies. First up, we have this Fantastic Four number 353 from 1991, and this is known as the first appearance of Mobius. Not Morbius the vampire, Mobius from the TVA. If any of you watched the Loki Disney Plus show, you know exactly who I'm talking about. That character is played by Owen Wilson, and there is a picture of him down here in the direct edition. So I never owned this book before. Happy to get the first appearance of Mobius. You see, it was priced at $5. Again, I got them all in trade for extra cards, so it cost me nothing. Next up is a pretty awesome comic book. I talk about how I love the Frank Miller Daredevil run. Well, here's an iconic one. This is Daredevil number 183 from 1982, and this is known as the first meet-up and battle between Daredevil and the Punisher. Iconic cover right there. This cover used to scare me as a kid. This comic book is not in great shape. It's a little bit stained. That's fine. It was only $2. Happy to pick it up. Here is another one, the very next issue, number 184. Very famous Frank Miller, Klaus Janson cover of sort of the Daredevil, Clint Eastwood, make my day kind of thing. So very cool comic book there. Next up, we have Classic X-Men number 1. Classic X-Men were comic books that were reprints of older X-Men books. I used to read all of these as a kid because I couldn't afford the actual older comic books, but I could always get the reprints. But this first issue is my favorite because it has this amazing team picture of the X-Men done by the incomparable Arthur Adams, one of my favorite artists. I absolutely love this book. I pick up this book every time I can see it. Once again, listed at $2. Always happy to get another copy cheap. Next up, we have Uncanny X-Men number 201. This is known as the first appearance of Baby Cable. Everyone knows the time-traveling mutant Cable, the leader of X-Force, a really tough guy. Well, he was actually the son of Cyclops and Madeline Pryor, who is the clone of Jean Grey. And Cyclops abandons his young child when he's little. Young Nathan Summers ends up getting whisked to the future, becomes the hardened mercenary Cable. He shows up in this comic book for the first time as a baby, sort of a minor key. Obviously, the big money book when it comes to Cable's first appearances is New Mutants number 87. But if you want a much cheaper alternative, this is sort of a fun one to get if you are a Cable fan. Speaking of Cable and X-Force, we have this one here. This is X-Force number 2. This is known as the second appearance of Deadpool right there. Again, another cheap book listed at $5. You can find this book for a couple of dollars, and sometimes in good grade, it can actually sell for quite a bit higher. So next up, I have a couple of comic books that feature very minor first appearances. I just talked about how much I like those trading cards from the early 90s. Well, when I was a kid, I liked to collect the first appearances of as many of those characters as possible, especially the minor ones, because I could get those comic books really cheap with my lunch money. So I've mentioned it on my channel several times. I like to collect those first appearances, and two of my good friends, Rohan and JP at the Absolute Game of Nerds, hashtag comic book shoutout, thought it would be a fun competition to basically do a video where we go through the card sets and show off as many of these books as we can. We recently did one for the second series of Marvel cards, and we're going to be doing one for the third series soon. So I see these first appearances all the time, and although I already have these books, I thought these would be fun comic books to send to some of my friends, pad their stats a little bit, and give them some extra points. So first up, we have this one here. This is Wolverine number 50. Really cool die-cut cover here, very 90s. And this features the first appearance of the character of Shiva. Very minor character. He's like an adamantium android who protects the Weapon X program. It doesn't matter. It's a cheap comic book. It was $2. This firmly reminds me of being a kid in the 90s, guys. The next one is actually a double first appearance in many ways. This is the Mighty Thor number 411. This is known as the first appearance of the team, the New Mutants, but also their leader, Night Thrasher. A very late 80s, early 90s character. And again, it's kind of a cool comic book, and it can actually go for a little bit of money. Here, it was $5, totally worth picking up. So if any of my friends who are going to be in this competition are looking for these books, let me know. I'm happy to give you guys a couple of extra points. But the last comic I got from Josh is absolutely my favorite, and it is this. This is Werewolf by Night number 10 from 1973. Awesome Tom Sutton cover showing the Jack Russell Werewolf by Night going towards this bound damsel in distress. Now, a lot of people love this Werewolf by Night cover because you have a bound damsel in distress, but I actually like the context of what's going on here, because if you see what she's saying, please don't kill me, I'm your sister. That's because this young lady is actually Lissa Russell, who is in fact Jack Russell's sister. So some real personal stakes there for the Werewolf by Night. Now, this is a cool comic book in its own right, but I want to bring it up right now, especially because I was recently on a Halloween live show put on by my very good friend Brandon at Mon Comics, hashtag comic book shoutout. And if you haven't seen Mon Comics Halloween special, guys, stop watching me right now and go watch that show, because I think it might have been the show of the year. Brandon had on something like 10 different comic collectors and comic, content creators on the show, showing off their favorite Halloween comic books. Also, some people dressed up and made fools of themselves, like yours truly. But while the show was going on, while Brandon was hosting it, he was actually getting a tattoo live. He was getting a Halloween tattoo put on his hand during the whole show, and then he showed it off at the end. Pretty awesome, guys. And it was such a great show. There were so many really cool comic books shown, and this makes me laugh because this comic book made an appearance like 4 or 5 times. Everyone had this comic book. It's a personal favorite Halloween themed book for so many people. An awesome comic book. Happy to add to my collection. Josh listed it as $10. It's not in the best shape. Has a pretty big spine roll. Who cares? It's a cool cover. Happy to have it. And once again, guys, definitely check out Brandon at Mon Comics. He has an awesome channel. He recently hit 1,000 subscribers, which he absolutely deserved. If you haven't checked out his channel and haven't subbed him up, absolutely do so. You will not be disappointed. So thank you so much, Josh, for doing the trade. I hope you enjoy all those Marvel cards. I know I'm going to enjoy all of these comic books. So a few months ago, I did a video on a comic book store called A Hero's Legacy in Connecticut that was sadly going out of business. But up until the day they closed, they were having fantastic deals on everything in the store. So I went down there and got a whole bunch of cheap comic books and also filmed a video because I was trying to get them some last minute business. But I vowed in that video that I would have to go back, not only because their deals were getting better every day up until their last day, but because they had a ton of X-Men comic books that I absolutely love. It's my favorite title. So I had to go back, and guys, I absolutely ended up with a huge stack of comic books. Most of these cost me only $1. So let's go through them really quickly. First, we have New X-Men number 129. This is part of the Grant Morrison run, and this is the first cover appearance of this character here, Phantom X, a very cool Grant Morrison mutant creation. Cool character. Next up, we have 2 copies of Wolverine number 23. Awesome cover art by John Byrne, one of my favorite X-Men artists. I love the way he does Wolverine, and these are great covers. Easy to pick it up for $1 each. Next up, we have a book I always pick up when I find it cheap. This is X-Men number 193, the first appearance of Firestar in continuity. I can never say no to this book because I like the character. Next, we have Uncanny X-Men number 198. This is part 2 of the life-death story, which is written by, of course, Chris Claremont, but also a collaboration with Barry Windsor Smith. Very cool Storm story, excellent read. Definitely check it out if you haven't already. And then we have this book here. This is Uncanny X-Men number 199. This is known as the first time Rachel Summers channels the Phoenix Force and becomes the Phoenix. Very cool cover by John Romita Jr. I got this book in pretty high grade last year to fill in my run. I got it pretty high grade for like $9. I think this is even higher grade and it cost me $1. And what's better than getting one of these guys? Getting 5 of these. I couldn't say no, guys. I really like this cover. I figured I could use this for like a gift or a throw-in. My sister loves all iterations of the Phoenix, so I'll throw one to her as well. So pretty cool comic book, guys. Happy to pick these up for $1 each. And if you think this is excessive, wait until you see the last book I got for $1. It's this. This is the Uncanny X-Men number 283. This is known as the full first appearance of this character, Bishop. Now, a lot of people recognize number 282 as his first appearance. He appears right on the cover, but that's more of a cameo appearance because even though he's on the cover, he only shows up on the last page. This is the first time he's in the full book. You find out about his personality, where he's traveled back in time. He meets the X-Men, these legendary heroes, refuses to believe they're the real X-Men. Pretty cool comic book. I like Bishop. This book usually goes for like $5 or less. But here's the thing. There were lots of duplicates of these X-Men books, guys. And because I like Bishop so much and I couldn't say no to $1, yeah, I think there's like 9 or 10 here. I think originally I had like 12 or 13 of these. I already gave a few of these away. In fact, I think I gave one of them to Rohan at Absolute Game and Nerds to basically fill in as his first appearance of Bishop for the game. So pretty cool, guys. Happy to pick up a whole bunch of these. I don't know what I'm going to do with them. They were worth picking up for $1 each. But this last comic book I did not get for $1. See, the deal they had was anything $6 or less was $1. Everything more than $6 was 50% off. So I got this. So this is Batman number 423 from 1988. Iconic Todd McFarlane cover of the Caped Crusader. Now, normally this book goes for quite a bit. So it might surprise you that I only got this for $7. How is that possible? 2 reasons. One, it's in terrible shape. It's really beat up, lots of creases, lots of color breaks. But even more importantly than that, it's actually a second printing. So second and third printings and later than that, anything but a first printing tend to usually go less than first printings. Now, if this is a newsstand copy, it's a little harder to tell which printing it is. You have to look inside the book or look on the ad on the back cover. If it's 1988, it's a first printing. If it's 1989, it's later printings. But if it's a direct copy, it's a much easier thing to determine. You just have to look right down here in the corner. If it's a first printing, it will show Batman's head right here in the cowl. And if it's a later printing, it will have something else. In this case, it says DC Comics aren't just for kids. So I knew right off the bat it had to at least be a second printing. So pretty cool, guys. It's an awesome book in any grade, in any printing. It's just awesome art. And the art's the same no matter what it is. So I was happy to pick this up for $7 just to own it. It definitely could use a press, but still, guys, pretty cool pickup for $7. All told, yeah, I probably spent a grand total of like $30. I was happy to give them some last second business and also get some pretty awesome comic books to add to the collection. So this next stack of comic books I actually got from a fan of the channel. And listen, guys, people ask me all the time if they can send me things. You absolutely do not have to. I definitely don't need anything. If you want to support the channel, all I'm asking is you just watch. That is it. And so people contact me all the time wanting to, send me comic books or trade comic books or sell me comic books. And I almost always say no, simply because I don't have a post office box and I don't often give out my address. But this individual named Mark gave me a pretty compelling reason. And it's because he's actually from the United Kingdom. He's from the Manchester area of England. And he had seen a recent video of mine where I talked about how I liked UK Pence variants of comics. I think they're pretty cool. They're fairly rare over here in the United States. And he wanted to send me some comic books in the hopes that, maybe we could start up some transatlantic trade. I could send him back some Sense copies while he sends me some Pence. And I thought, guys, hey, he lives in England. What's the harm? I gave him my address. And I was very surprised when he sent me a big stack of comic books with a very nice written letter. So thank you, Mark. This was quite nice. And the other thing is he clearly watches my channel because he knows exactly what I like. And I think you're all going to agree. So these are all Pence copies, right? First up, we have some X-Men books. We have Uncanny X-Men number 136. This is part of the Dark Phoenix saga. Very famous cover, homaged and riffed on all the time in comic books of, one hero holding another one that's dead or dying. Very cool. We have number 139. I believe this is the first time you see Wolverine in his brown suit. We have number 144, very cool comic with an appearance by Man-Thing. We have number 146, which has an Arcade and Murder World appearance. And we have number 147. So that's it for the X-Men books, kind of. He's threw in some other random stuff, which is very cool. We have Marvel Presents Guardians of the Galaxy number 3, showing Starhawk right there. We have The Amazing Spider-Man number 222 with him battling, I believe this is Speed Demon, a speedster villain who's always a huge thorn in Spider-Man's side. This might be my favorite one. This is Moon Knight number 13. Awesome cover showing two of my favorite characters, Moon Knight and Daredevil. Awesome. Then we have Power Man and Iron Fist. I like both of these characters, but I particularly like this book because they're also teaming up with the Daughters of the Dragon, Colleen Wing and Misty Knight, two characters I like very much. Quick editor's note, this comic book is also the second appearance of Sabretooth. I was mad that I forgot that. All right, back to the video. But the last three comics, guys, are absolutely the most interesting. We have Hell's Angel number 2, number 4, and number 10. Now, if you've never heard of the character of Hell's Angel, it's probably because you live in the United States, because she is a UK imprint-only character, sort of an anti-hero character. And you can see why Mark sent these to me. It's because all three of these issues are co-starring the X-Men. So, again, he definitely knows what I like. Now, this is a very interesting character with some really cool trivia. You'll notice the first two issues, it's titled Hell's Angel. But the third one is Dark Angel. And that's because when this character came out, Marvel was sued by the biker club, the Hells Angels. And basically to resolve that lawsuit, Marvel agreed on a $35,000 donation to the Ronald McDonald House charity, on behalf of both Marvel and the Hells Angels, and on the condition that they would change her name to Dark Angel forever after. So very, very cool there, guys. Not comic books I've ever seen before in the United States. Very cool. I especially like the fact that these have the X-Men in it, and you can see that publication trivia right there on these covers. Very cool. So thank you so much, Mark, for all of these. That was very generous of you, and definitely I'll start putting together a pile of comic books I think you might like and have to send them across the pond. Awesome. Thank you so much. So these next comic books I got at my favorite local comic book store, His and Her Comics in Greenfield, Massachusetts. I mention the store all the time on my channel. I have a great relationship with the owner, Nishan, and I'm there often. As a matter of fact, I was just there earlier today, and it seems like every time I walk into this store, I walk out with something good. So all these comic books I'm about to show you, I got at His and Her Comics over several different trips over the last month, starting with this one. I was up there recently and saw this comic book, and I couldn't live without it. This is Marvel Superheroes Winter Special. This comic book here is from 1991. Now, Marvel Superheroes was a comic series that was put out in multiple volumes. This is volume 2, where Marvel could just kind of do like one-shot stories. Sometimes they have multiple stories featuring lots of different characters. They were kind of like an annual, but not for any one title. And in fact, I recently got the first appearance of the Guardians of the Galaxy were in a Marvel Superheroes. So this is part of the second volume. You see here it's an 80-page comic book with 3 stories, one featuring the X-Men, one with Namor, and one with Iron Man. And I love these comics as a kid, guys, because you get more bang for your buck, right? For $2.25, you get 80 pages of comic awesomeness in 3 different stories, lots of characters. But this particular book is pretty awesome because it's well known as a first appearance of a cool character. The character is Doreen Green, also known as Squirrel Girl. So she appears in the Iron Man story here, and Squirrel Girl was supposed to be just sort of a silly character. She was actually created by Steve Ditko, believe it or not, and Will Murray was the writer, and she was supposed to be sort of a joke character. He really wanted something like really light and silly, and she is a girl with, you know, squirrel powers. She can climb, and she's agile, and she can also command squirrels. And in this comic book here, she is auditioning for the Avengers by basically trying to beat Iron Man. Now, she's also well known as, despite her silly power set, she's defeated some incredibly powerful people in the Marvel Universe, including, in this very issue, Doctor Doom. She defeats Doctor Doom, the most powerful villain in all of Marvel Comics, with a horde of squirrels. Yeah, she's a silly character, and she probably would have been relegated to the dustbin of Marvel history if not for the fact she actually got her own series. She was part of the Avengers in the Great Lakes Avengers. People really liked her. They liked the fact she had really funny, light stories. and she ended up becoming such a popular character. Believe it or not, guys, they actually filmed a pilot for a show where she was the main character. So she's a very well-loved character, not just a joke character when she first came out, and I'm really happy to get her first appearance. This comic book isn't in the best condition. You know, it's a square-bound book. It has some issues, some color breaks, a little bit of staining, but I was able to get it for $20. I think that's a great deal for a character that's become very popular in this day and age, and I gotta tell you guys, my 7-year-old daughter thinks Squirrel Girl is awesome. So happy to pick up this first appearance for that amount of money. But the last 3 comic books I want to show you from His and Her Comics, I actually got in a trade. I did a recent video where I got some She-Hulk comic books. I got 3 first Savage She-Hulks along with a whole bunch of other early issues and some King Conans. I did a video where I worried I paid too much for those comic books, but since that video came out, I was able to sell one of those, and Nishon at His and Her Comics contacted me saying he could use all of those comic books. He wanted the She-Hulks and the King Conans. He wanted me to bring them up to trade. You guys know me, I love X-Men comics, so I found 3 X-Men comic books I wanted to trade for, and I think I got a fantastic deal. I'm not worried that I paid too much for those She-Hulks anymore. First up, we have a comic book I needed for my Chris Claremont run. It's this. This is X-Men number 124. This is your classic Chris Claremont, John Byrne, Dave Cockrum, Terry Austin collaboration. It's sort of the absolute best of the best working on these books, in my opinion. And this, of course, features Colossus on the cover as sort of a bad guy. He's like a Soviet-era villain. Very cool comic book, guys. I needed it, absolutely. It's got a little bit of staining, but who cares? Happy to add it to the run. This also reminds me of another comic book shout-out, this time Ryan, the Colossus Collector. Ryan is a YouTuber from Canada who, like me, loves the X-Men, but whereas Nightcrawler is my favorite character, Colossus is his. I know he loves this comic book, but I'm also reminded of his channel because of this next comic book. It's this. This is X-Men number 53. It's from 1969. And this shows the X-Men fighting the character of Blastar, who is a bad guy from the Negative Zone. Now, normally there's not really much going on in this comic book or many claims to fame, except for one. This is the first work on comic books by Barry Windsor Smith. He's an artist that I like very much. He did the art on the inside. He also did this cool cover. The reason I think of Ryan, the Colossus Collector, is he recently talked about this comic book on his channel, and he didn't know why he got it. He doesn't like Barry Windsor Smith, and he joked, it's like, I don't know why I got that comic book. Well, I'll tell you why I got it, because I think this cover is really, really cool, and it was a great comic book to sort of add into this trade. So, again, guys, if you haven't checked out Ryan, the Colossus Collector, I will link down below in my description a link to his YouTube channel. He's excellent. The last comic book I got in this trade, though, is an absolutely fantastic one. I collected first appearances of the X-Men characters, and other than that X-Men number 1 with all the big characters there, I only have a few left that I have to pick up, but this was one of them. This is a book I've been looking for a long time, and it's this. This is X-Men number 64 from 1970, and this is the first appearance of Shiro Yoshida, also known as Sunfire. Sunfire in this comic book here is an antagonist to the X-Men. He's sort of a hot-headed pain in the butt, really. But various times over the X-Men's history, he's been a member of the team. And actually, he was a member of the giant-size X-Men team. He didn't last very long. He's a terrible team player. But still, he's always either an X-Man or an X-Men adjacent character. He also has a really cool claim to fame in that in the late 90s, Marvel published Big Hero 6, where he was one of the major main characters. Big Hero 6 was a team of Japanese superheroes. If you've heard of Big Hero 6, it's probably because you've seen that movie or the TV show starring that character of Baymax. That show is loosely based off of the Marvel publications. You know, it doesn't exactly work in continuity, but still a very cool character with a very long history, has been involved in a lot of cool X-Men stories since its introduction in 1970. I'm happy to finally get his appearance. I want to point out this is written by Roy Thomas, art by Sal Buscema, but the character was actually designed by Don Heck, who gave him this awesome sort of imperial Japanese flag design and this cool dragon mask. Very cool looking character, I might add. So very happy to pick this up, guys, and add it to my X-Men First Appearances collection. Not too many more to go. So we've finally come to the last item, and it is definitely a special one. I mentioned in the beginning of the video that there was a reason I was doing all these comic book shoutouts, and this item ties them all together. Because there is one more thing that Big B McFly does to promote this awesome community building event that he came up with. And that is, if you mention another channel on your videos and you put that hashtag comic book shoutout in the title or description, you are automatically eligible for a special prize. What is that prize? Well, one thing I haven't told you yet, Big B McFly is an incredible artist. And every single month, he basically takes a pool of everyone who's used that hashtag, puts them in a random generator, and pulls one winner to win a special art piece from him. And it just so happened, guys, that a few months ago, I won. And I just got this in the mail today to LMC from Big B McFly. Now, one of the cool things that Brian does is he asks you what you want him to draw, and he usually starts with your favorite character. Now, he knows mine is Kurt Wagner, Nightcrawler. Of course, I mention it all the time. But he was just sort of picking my brain saying, you know, hey, what do you like about Nightcrawler? And I said, well, I love the fact that Nightcrawler, you know, it sort of epitomizes the whole mutant struggle. You know, he looks like a monster to the outside world, but everyone who reads X-Men comics knows he's the complete opposite. He has a heart of gold. He is one of the best friends an X-Man could have. He's, you know, a man of faith. He's an awesome human being. And when you read X-Men books, I think it's interesting because you know he's a nice guy and he doesn't look scary. He looks cool. But to the outside world, he looks like nothing more than a villain, a demon, and a monster. And Brian kind of went with that and he said, well, maybe it would be cool from someone who knows the X-Men so much like I do to see Nightcrawler as the monster the rest of the world sees. I said, go with it. So Brian drew this art. I have not seen it. He actually did a video of him actually working on it on his YouTube channel. I accidentally clicked on it. I saw him working on it and I shut it off because I wanted to be surprised. So I just took the package out and I know the art's right here. I can see the corner of it, but I realize now he sent something else as well that I did not expect. So let me open that first before I show you guys the art. It's too much, Brian. I already know it's too much. There's a lot in here. Okay, we get some comic books, guys. All right, what do we have? We have Flair prints Magneto. This is a print of Magneto from the 1994, one of the card sets, I think. Oh man, there's something on the other side. Huh, that's awesome. And on the other side is Ghost Rider. How cool is that? Oh man, this is funny. I just got first appearance of Ghost Rider. That must be why he was giving me this. We have Ghost Rider, The Road to Damnation. So this is a trade paperback. I've not read the story. It's got a parental advisory, so I know it's going to be good. Whoa, we have some other cool stuff here. Good, I don't have enough DC. We have a World's Finest, number 195, a 15 center, showing Batman and Superman being really bad guys. That's awesome. We also have, this must be for my son. I mentioned that my son is really into Magic the Gathering. There are Magic comics, and here is one, Magic #1 from Boom Studios. Absolutely, this is going to my son Jack, who loves them. And finally, I don't even know what this is. This is, Dallas Cowboys cheerleaders missing Spider-Man, Incredible Hulk, and Southeast Showdown. This is advertising stuff. I don't even know what this is. A 60-cent Sergeant Harris. Brian will have to explain this to me. I've never seen this before, and it's really hard to stump me, guys. So wow, this looks amazing. I can't wait to find out what this is. All right, so let's see what the art is. I didn't expect the comic books, but here we go, guys. This is the art. Oh. Wow. Oh man, I gotta show you guys this. Here we go. You see Nightcrawler leaping down from like the rafters or something, or bamfing, looking like a villainous creature. Yeah, he's a crazy good artist, guys. Enter Nightcrawler 2023, Big B. Oh, and you wrote a letter on the back. Hopefully this isn't too sentimental and lovey-dovey here. Mike.
Words cannot begin to express what inspiration you have been to the comic community.
Thanks so much for being a part of the whole shoutout thing. I hope you enjoy the contents. Proud to call you my friend, Brian, aka Big B McFly. Right back at you, buddy. You do so much for the community. I'm so happy I met you. You're one of those people I've met I consider a real-life friend ever since my channel began. So thank you so much, Brian. This is awesome. I'm going to have to find a really cool place for this somewhere on the wall behind me, guys. Original art ever is a fantastic thing to get, especially when it's from a very special friend. Awesome, Brian. Thank you so much for this. And guys, you can participate in the comic book shoutout as well. If you make YouTube videos, just shout out some other YouTubers, especially ones that you think deserve more attention. Ones that are just starting out, perhaps. Make sure you put that hashtag comic book shoutout in the title or down in the description, and you'll be eligible to win some pretty awesome art as well. Man, how cool is that? Another editor's note, I almost forgot, Brian isn't the only person that does original art for these giveaways. Also, Travis from Comics Limited does them as well. How can I forget you, Travis? So, hashtag comic book shoutout, Comics Limited. There, I feel better. Back to the video. So there you go, guys, a rather large comic book roundup video, but I was excited to show these off, especially when so many of them were from really great friends of the channel. Head on down in the comments and let me know which of my pickups you like the best. And while you're down there, head on down to the description because I will link to every single comic creator that I mentioned in this video. Definitely check them out, guys. If you like comic books, it is definitely worth a watch. And of course, a huge thank you to the person who put this all together, Brian, aka Big B McFly, the comic book guy, not only for this amazing personal art, but for coming up with this great community building event. Guys, you got to follow him on Instagram and on YouTube. Not only can you see his live videos he does with other comic YouTubers, but you get to see him working on his art in real time, and he is absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much, Brian, for this fantastic idea and bringing attention to so many great YouTubers. That's it, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Keep hunting for comic books in strange and unusual places, and I'll see you all next time.